Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Phil Andrews. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We warmly welcome the family of Private Richard Saxon, whose story will be told shortly. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Richard Saxon. Richard Saxon was born in Melbourne around 1872, the son of Margaret and Joseph Saxon. He grew up in the suburb of Brunswick alongside a large family. After his father died in 1907, Richard found work as a quarryman, living with his mother Margaret and at least one brother Henry. On the 12th of July 1915, Richard and his brother Henry enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force and were given consecutive service numbers. Richard was 43 years old, Henry 35. After initial training in Australia, in November the pair were allotted as reinforcements to the 8th Battalion and embarked from Adelaide, bound for overseas service. After travelling to Egypt in late March 1916, the Saxon brothers embarked aboard the troopship Transylvania. Landing in France in April, they travelled from Marseille to join their battalion in the trenches and were finally taken on strength in July. The battalion's first major action in France took place that month at Pozières in the Somme Valley. The village of Pozières lay atop a ridge roughly in the centre of the British sector of the Somme battlefield, near the highest point on the battlefield. The village was an important German defensive position, an outpost to the second defensive trench system known to the British as the OG, or Old German Lines. The Allies planned to launch a large-scale offensive in the Somme region of northern France, but when the Germans launched their own operation against the French at Verdun, the British were left to conduct the battle with reduced assistance. Intended in part to divert the German army's attention from Verdun, the offensive around Pozières saw the 1st, 2nd and 4th Australian Divisions wrest a small, devastated area from the enemy, but at a staggering cost. Over 42 days, the Australians made as many as 19 attacks against German positions. The final casualties totalled an appalling 23,000 men killed, wounded or taken prisoner. The losses sustained throughout that exhausting period were almost unsustainable for a volunteer army. The 1st Division, of which the Saxons' 8th Battalion was part, was the first to go into battle, doing so on the 23rd of July 1916. The Australians managed to capture the village and were subjected to relentless artillery bombardment that reduced the village to rubble. The 2nd Division relieved the 1st and suffered even more losses, attacking towards the heights east of the village. The 4th Division then went in, pressing its attack north towards Moquet Farm and holding off the German attempts to retake Pozières. Each of the 3 Australian divisions, though severely reduced, served a second tour on this notorious battleground. The Australian official historian Charles Bean later wrote that Pozières Ridge is more densely sown with Australian sacrifice than any other place on earth. While Henry Saxon survived the carnage of Pozières, Richard was posted as missing on the 18th of August. Henry later reported that he was with Richard when he was taken prisoner that day. "I could pick him out of 6 of my mates, which they had on the German lines at daybreak," he wrote. A court of inquiry later determined that Richard had been killed in action on the 18th of August 1916. His remains were buried just east of Pozières and today lie in the Pozières British Cemetery in France, one of more than 13,000 casualties from the First World War. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Richard Saxon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.